Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck happenings here in Inmendham. There, I got it right that time, mostly. People complain about the strangest things. Somebody write a comment because I go, before I say welcome, or when I start a video or whatever I do, but it's that kind of feeling. It's not. It's hard to fake enthusiasm for having to do this, and so that'll sort of be the subject of this video, I suppose. It's been a whole long conversation between Piero and Holiday, and no suggestion at all that you waste any time at all watching any of his videos. It's just hours and hours of what Piero and Holiday do, which is just talk and talk and talk and say nothing that means anything, ever. Arguing just, well, we can't talk about shoe size until we establish that brown is a subjective interpretation of a wavelength of light, and blah, it's, what the fuck. Never mind. Their philosophies are so woven into so much, I need to be able to connect the dots into unicorns, or I need to connect the dots into reason why I don't have to take any responsibility for existence. So it's the nihilism versus the silver liningism or hopeism or whatever the fuck it is that Piero lives on. So then they get into this whole, butthurt whine fest where they just, I thought you were my friend. You're calling me stupid? And it's just, who can listen to this shit? Especially when it's all over the fact that both of them are retarded and incapable of articulating consistent thought. It just doesn't happen in their brains. There's no pre-thought, maybe. I don't know what it is. But there's no reasoned arguments. And because they don't know what reasoning is, they don't know what argument is, and they certainly don't know what logic is. As I've attempted to point out, it's merely what facts do. It's what dots automatically do. Is they represent something in a form that's not overtly something. It has to be formalized into something, and it is recognized, associated with things that become established as facts. So by understanding relationships, you understand that dots have relationships, and that distance, and that they can go left or they can go right, if you were to connect them, and you understand those simple principles, and then you run your modeling mind to see what can I recognize here, and you start recognizing pieces and elements of two eyeballs. I get that. Smiley face. I get that. So you can get parts, and then once you get parts, you get wholes. But anyway, so if you have seen any of this crap, they're arguing over what logic is and what circular logic is, and so 2 points for Holiday for recognizing that no, an argument is a formula, it's formalized, and it's sort of dependent on a process of when you're doing the modeling thing, you assume, okay, let's see what turning left does. So you establish turning left as a principle and turn left rather than right. And you establish that for the sake of the model. Will this work? And so you have it as a premise, an axiom, whatever. And for the sake of argument, you establish these axioms are irrevertible. You can't undo what you have established as a truth in the context of the argument. Now, Pyrrho hates this rule, okay? And it means nothing to him as a principle. So if you do this thing of establishing axioms, and then in the argument you point out how it's two eyes and a smiley face, we know what's happening. We know it's coming. We know what it's not. It's lots of things that are not going to be two eyes and a smiley face. And if he sees that looking like, oh, well, that's going to contradict my silly theory of life, then all of a sudden the axioms get blown up, because going right can't be right, because going right will mean he's wrong, so to speak. And this has been the pattern. It's quite obvious over time now that I have, in hindsight, now that the dots have been placed on the board, I can see what the bullshit is. And it will always be the same bullshit of fuck the established rules or context of the conversation. I'm an incessantly glib and silly person, and I will incessantly glib and silly on any useful conversation, because I don't choose to believe in anything if it in any way indicates my fundamental philosophy of glib, balloon-shaped like unicorn chasing is retarded. And it's retarded, and most conversations will, in some way or other, contradict his retarded life theory, because it's a retarded life theory. Yeah. So, yes. So anyway, so there's, I've had this conversation before about establishing what the, you have to draw a line somewhere with this whole friendship bullshit. And yes, his tits are much too small for me to cut him any slack, from a subjective, personal, selfish point of view. The line is going to get drawn a lot harder and a lot sooner than it will with somebody who might actually have some other feature that makes them interesting. And Pyrrho doesn't have any of those. He can't even construct a video where the video actually plays the audio in some way you can hear it, and all this other stuff. It's just totally obnoxious to the senses, and the content is obnoxious. So yes, I'm drawing my too stupid line. I have drawn it, and I've pointed it out and said there's just no point in interacting. It's just eating food and then throwing it up. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. He thinks this is fun. Principles are fun. Conflict is fun. Fighting for social justice. He's a big social justice warrior. He thinks this is fun. So yeah, that's how much you don't get it. Let's argue with rapists. It'd be fun. No, it won't be fun. Let's argue with idiots who like to pollute the water. Oh, it'd be fun. No, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be a fucking waste of my time that I shouldn't have to engage in, because people shouldn't be this fucking stupid. So on the Hotlodite side, it's even more insane in a way, because he actually understands that, yes, for the sake of argument, you have to establish these premises, but again, he doesn't accept that there are premises outside the scope of his idiotic notions that determinism means futility, that all conversation and edification of human beings never takes place. They don't have to rationally think about anything. They don't have to have conversation. They don't have to use time and argue. Yeah, they do. That's all part of the determinism. Newsflash. They have to spread the word, so to speak, before everybody picks up their pitchfork and charges the castle. They all have to make an argument. They have to persuade everybody that it might be worth dying for, and then they have to go do it. And all of that requires investment in the fact that, oh yeah, there's a difference between me doing that, getting my pitchfork, and not getting my pitchfork. Those two worlds are different worlds, and there's something at value that makes them different. The thing that, why are they different? Value difference. It's important. Yeah. So he doesn't understand that feelings are important. They're not something we're inevitably going to do, in the sense that Yes, there'll be an inevitable outcome, but the inevitable outcome only takes place if idiots are idiots. See, if smart people are smart people, then stupid doesn't happen. But if smart people are stupid, glib, idiotic, narcissistic nihilists, then stupid things will happen. Duh. The very fact that you have to argue this with this idiot, that we have no established premise, because frankly, I can't in the life of me, for the life of me, for every bit of life in me, understand any moronic philosophy founded on the fundamental premise that torture doesn't matter. Bring it on. Yeah, no. Too fucking retarded. By millions and billions of miles and light years. So there's no argument worth having in a premise that says I cannot possibly be allowed to see two eyeballs and a smiley face. I can't see qualia. And I certainly can't see it as a meaningful thing happening in the universe. Because it only happens to the dots. Some kind of bullshit like that. It only happens to the thoughts. It doesn't happen to things having the thoughts or things having the feelings. So anyway, I've already been over this argument that he's using this subtle bit of wordplay where he thinks because our feelings get associated with things in the world. I have a bad feeling and I associate, say, watching a woman getting tied to the railroad tracks and then decapitated by a train as repulsive and unpleasant, that somehow it's just a subjective, idiotic notion of some kind of biology. It's like getting an erection. No, it's a thought process connected to that, associated with other thought processes that have established that's a bad thing. And it's not just some biological reaction. It's not some fake biological association. It's a rational association between, as I've pointed out millions of times now, it literally is probably a million, I am sampling consciousness. I know what feelings are, and as a factual logical statement, I'm saying it's happening to the other things with the 100 billion neurons, and it's happening to the other things with 248,000 neurons. It in fact is happening. Very crude function, reward and punishment. The evolution found out it can squeeze your testicles a long time ago and make you do shit. And it doesn't work because of the squeezing. It works because of the pain, the unpleasantness associated with it. So that sort of brings up self-evident truth. The truths you acquire through tasting, through, hey, I did it. I stepped in the water. I know water is, let's call it wet, okay? Let's agree that wet, by definition, means what water is. See, that's a self-evident truth in the sense that we invented the word to describe the qualia of water. So it's obviously self-evident because the word was invented for the sole purpose of describing the qualia of the water. But the other self-evident truths would be the ones where you sample it, you do it, and you do it in some overtly way where it's just, hey, you can't misunderstand walking upstairs versus walking downstairs. Let's just say, as one of the axioms, you're not really misunderstanding. The gravity does work the same way every fucking time, never fails. No point in even discussing the fact that this is a wrong information or you've misinterpreted what happened or any of that bullshit. I'm not misinterpreting negative sensations and positive sensations. They exist for a reason. It's reward and punishment. There's no fuck up. I'm not delusional because I find some sensations to be totally and awful and torturous. And see, we just have to invent words for these things because there's no other representation but personal experience. You have to experience them to know what they are. I've said these exact words. A synthetic intelligence that is not sentient, that is, it cannot smell or taste or feel. It can only sense and say, that wavelength is 748 nanohertz. It can only do that. It can only technically describe things, but it can't have the visual qualia experience, then it can't know anything. It can't understand the subject. It has to taste something relevant to the category. And nothing else, as I pointed out, nothing else is like consciousness. There's nothing in the universe that we know of like consciousness. It's just not. You can't use symbolic language because there's no connections. There's no icons. There's no previous renditions. There's only one rendition. So that's it. Self-evident. So, I mean, I guess I could play some Puro Slut because it is, you know, you can prove his self-contradictory nature. You just watch his videos and he just keeps doing it over and over again. His vocabulary is so fucking mushy, so vacuous, and he just constantly contradicts it. He'll make emphatic statements. I don't believe in self-evident truths. 2 videos later, my entire film strip is a self-evident truth. 2 videos later. Which is sort of a long time, because yes, that's an hour and a half later, but I'm just saying, direct contradiction. Oh no, you misunderstood my emphatic statement. I just meant, I don't believe in any self-evident truths outside of everything I know. Yeah, okay. My fault, my bad. No, I don't think it was my bad. So maybe I'll play that part, and other parts. But I want to re-emphasize the word glib. I did write down. And friendly bullshit with glib motherfuckers when you're talking about social justice absolutely sucks. Fuck this bullshit. I'm going to be friends with Adolf Hitler or something. Fuck that. I'm going to be friends with Donald Trump or his stupid fucking disgusting and putrid spawn or something. Fuck that. I don't care how big their boobs are. Never going to be big enough to corrupt me with, you know, some crocodile mechanism that'll glue me to them for some dopey self-interest. You know, you just can't bribe me with enough personal gain to take the social pain of what these assholes represent as a definition and as a cause of idiocracy. They are the cause of it, these fuckers evading reality and these fuckers chasing bullshit. Whether it's fear, Holiday, or whether it's horny, Puro, doesn't matter. They're both selling out to nonsense. Yeah. Let's see, is there some other way to... oh yeah, he'll say things like there's, you know, Puro, that people can't handle being a hypocrite, essentially. They can't handle having no principles. It's just lawyers. That's all he wants to play. He wants to play, let's pretend we're lawyers. Let's pretend we are self-interested, social psychopaths, essentially, who are perfectly comfortable in letting evil loose because they're going to get paid to do it. And we should act that way in our lives. We should have the character of fucking shysters, and that's what Puro fundamentally is just a fucking shyster. Yeah, I don't do that. I'm not here to do that. And then they lie about what their motives are, which is another pile of shit, you know, as if they're not trying to defend positions. Turn right, because then it doesn't turn to a snark's face. You know, make it a straight line. Don't connect the dots that way. Connect them with these fake dots over here, because then you can avoid seeing what it actually is. You know, that parameciums don't have anything called a brain, and that there's absolutely no evidence that there's any infrastructure in the universe that works as brain, or guess what? Biology would have capitalized on it. I mean, I made these simple arguments to Puro. He's conceded some of them. So let's say if I argue to you, people use microtubules, or they'll use whatever, quantum entanglement, or they'll use some kind of bullshit and say, oh, that's also like a brain. Now, if it was, evolution would use it. So our brains wouldn't be these giant things consuming like 100 watts. Well, let's say 70 watts an hour. Well, 70 watts all the time. Your brain is consuming a kind of a lot of energy, especially when you have to feed it, to do the energy thing. It's forcing your metabolism to degrade itself, to metabolize food, to process this, in their cases, glib nonsense. It's pretty expensive considering what we're producing, I would argue. But anyway, very expensive to run this thing, very expensive to protect it, very expensive to keep all the veins from popping and doing all kinds of stuff. Complex machine. Why would evolution waste all of these resources on this giant brain if there wasn't some necessity, in a sense, to do it this way, not the paramecium way? It's not an invalid argument. Not that evolution ever goes all the way to efficiency. I mean, you could argue that what our brain is doing is nowhere near as efficient as what, say, 1 billion ants could do. Like, you could probably replace our brain with 1 billion ants. Well, let's say 1 million, say 300 million ant brains. Yeah. And you'd say, yeah, 300 million ant brains has to be better than this thing. No doubt about it. So it's not like evolution always does things the efficient way. But I'm just saying this, if it already invented microtubule brains with parameciums, it would just capitalize on that brain. It would expand that brain. And that's the brain we'd have. That's the brain the most intelligent thing on Earth would have. So anyway, you could get him to concede, okay, I get it. Consciousness doesn't just happen because you put some structure together that, communicates chemistry or something. Because there's action and reaction someplace doesn't mean you have a brain. Concede that point. But then, a day later, the concession to the fact that you argued it to pieces and finally got him to concede that it's probably unrealistic to think parameciums are doing anything called conscious feeling. Like if I cut my hand off, it seems kind of silly to think my hand is worried and it's over there being thirsty and saying, ooh, I have an injury, ooh. See, the body is connected to my brain. So the body could say, yeah, I'm missing my hand and I have a cut. But the hand can't do it because it doesn't got a brain. So you can make these, like I say, you can make all these arguments, you invest all this time to say, look, let's go right and let's see what the reality is. And it writes a pretty good picture. The dots connect and it's pretty coherent to everything we have established as being true. Clouds be up, mud be down, all that kind of stuff. It connects to all the stuff we can agree on. And so, yeah, it looks pretty much like it's one of those things we can put in the category of a truth. That's what having an argument is. That's what logic is. And he will, a day later, just go back. Just forget that he learned anything, connected some dots, drew a picture, and he'll just erase yesterday's pictures. So he never advances because he doesn't think he needs to. I mean, I certainly don't think I need to, but my argument is I'm not erasing anything I accepted. I never accepted God. I never accepted all this bullshit. So I have no obligation to erase anything because I've never bothered saying, let's talk about what if there was a God and he was a drunk driver. No, let's not do that. That's silly. Yeah. Let's talk about if Bugs Bunny really did run the universe. No, let's not bother with that. So I have no obligation to erase. And I haven't seen anything. Nobody could show me the decisive argument made by anybody pointing out how Inmendham's wrong, entirely wrong. No, that hasn't happened. Nobody plays those clips. Nobody, whatever the word is for that, virals or attempts to viral some perfect moment where the adversary just made some sort of brilliant counter-argument. demonstrating where Inmendham took a wrong turn somewhere. So yeah, so I guess I'll play some of this tripe, and you know, just moments of it, just so you can see some of it. And but yeah, it is frustrating and irritating to, like I said, there's, you know, people who think this is fun. I think that's like a retard eating his own poo and saying yum yum, in my opinion. This isn't what I would do with my time if I didn't think I had to do this. It's not my chosen career. My chosen career would be, you know, painting naked women and shit. That'd be my chosen career. I'd be doing something I enjoy. I mean, maybe I would have done some physics conversations or something, but you know, even that's very unfruitful, because again, the axioms of, well, let's talk about a real universe, and let's talk about the value of a unified theory, and let's not pretend that wouldn't be incredibly satisfying, and it would fit into all the stuff we experience in terms of the universe and its simplicity and its crude function as we see it in the universe. As we look out into the universe, we don't see chaos and mush and quantum zippity-zap and disconnected things. We see connected things. Everything seems very connected, action, reaction. And clearly it doesn't seem like, well, there's really 17 layers of ether, and they all function entirely different. So we have the bent space ether, and we have the bent time ether, and then we have the bent quantum ether, and the bent neutron ether, and the positron ether, and the and all of these infrastructures, all these things that bend and twist and move and do stuff, are all invisible, and you'll never understand how any of them ever work. And the universe is doing something simpler, not something more complex. There's no God. See, that's the same thing with the God, right? They can create something more complicated than the problem they're attempting to resolve. Something more problematic than the problem. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit into the patterns that exist, the zillions of patterns. The ant has to move all of its legs to move from one place to another, and it can't just stick its leg up in the air and just say, I'm going to walk in the air. Can't do that. Has to obey rules. And their theories don't contain any rules because it doesn't contain any substance, because everything's a fake, bent thing, force thing, virtual thing. Alright, a separate subject. Anyway. Okay, so yeah, so let's do that, and let's see, is there any other shit I want to comment on? I did make a video to Hoffler-Day, and put it on the website, so I don't know if you haven't seen it, go to the Do Not God site, look at the video index, and there's Hoffler-Day's dopey face on the icon. And if this is 100 years from now, and somebody's watching this video, that probably won't work. So you'll have to go find it some other way, so that won't work. It probably just says Hoffler-Day dumbass or whatever. It's hopefully the last video to that fucknut. And, you know, just winnow myself off of this bad drug of idiot on the internet to converse with, just because they're here. So that's an argument I've been using lately, because that's all everything means anything to people. People are just obsessed with things that are here, remaining here. They're not so obsessed about creating something or making this or doing that, right? They're, people talk about, oh yeah, I'd put life on Mars, but they don't invest any real energy in any of that nonsense, because that's not important. But if there was life on Mars, we'd have to keep it life on Mars, because everything has to stay the way it is. So I hate change, personally, so I understand that reaction. But just to understand, that's all you're doing. You're just basically saying, I can deal with this if we don't change anything. But I can't deal with it if we change things. I don't like that. Something goes extinct. Oh my God, that's just horrible. I mean, it can't be rationally argued as horrible. It doesn't have any horrible consequence, but they think it's horrible. But that's a whole other subject too. You could just go on and on and on about that whole concept of, it just seems like it's the here-ness that matters. You know, there's a cat named Joe. And because the cat named Joe exists, they got to keep it alive. Because, oh, I gotta feel for the cat, and it's struggling, and it's fighting, and it's doing all. Yeah, it could also do it if I just make a new cat and call it Jerry. It could do the same damn thing. So as soon as Joe gets expensive, like starts consuming $10,000 a year, okay, that's what we're paying for medicine. Some asshole left a comment, you know, ragging on me because I'm not for an insanely stupid universal healthcare system. I mean, I'm for some universal healthcare, but I'm also for not thinking human beings are worth $1 million. And that's what we have. We have the $1 million, $6 million man TV show. Yeah, well, we're doing the $1 million man thing. And there ain't no man on this planet worth no $1 million. There ain't no woman. So it's not happening. You're way too full of yourselves, thinking that you can piss away $10,000 per person per year, running these dopey machines, and you haven't done anything yet. That's $10,000 off the top. Too much, way too much, way too expensive for such shitty machines. That's what I would argue. Who's going to pay for it? Nobody wants to pay for it. So yeah, that's why I'm against this, because no one's paying for it. They're borrowing their children's money to pay for it. They're putting debt on a credit card to pay for this preposterously expensive indulgence of saying, I'm here and I must remain here. Even if I'm going to die and it's just a preposterous waste of money, waste the money, because I'm here and I must stay here. I understand the feeling. I mean, I have the feeling. I have the I'm here feeling and I should be here. But it's a feeling. It's a notion. It's not rational. Except in the cases like me, where you could argue the world needs me. I'm actually am important. I don't want to be, but I actually am, unfortunately. Because you're all fucking idiots, and somebody has to explain it to you and try to rub your nose in the idiocracy and say, no, bad, bad, no. Do not do idiocracy, you dumb fuck. Do not leave that shit in the living room. Okay. Now, so let's play some Dopey Piro and see if they're, well, let me get the logistics over with. Let's see. So I got that on the website. I did do the Joe Rogan Experience with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and no 7 parts. No, it was insufferably useless. You could just see the whole conversation was just mush. They were not going to get to anything important. And you know, realistically, they can't, because the audience isn't up to an important conversation on physics. So I guess I get that, but you know, who cares? You know, about a trivial re-examination of the silly physics experiments and the silly physics, show physics. Been there, done that. I don't need another lesson in show physics. All right. So I guess this was part 3, cognition, he calls it. Huh. That's a joke. Somewhere around here. I think it was the 14 mark, but we'll just say this is close enough. Let's see if it'll play, though. That'll be the trick.
We can state our actions as self-evident truths, but if they come from experience or not.
See, that's what we're debating. I would like you to...
So, okay, so Piro, Haas had to say we state our axioms, and then Piro says that's what we're debating. No, that's logic. You have to play it as a model. You have to build the pinball machine to allow the pinball play to happen. So you build it with bumpers in certain places, and then you evaluate whether this is a good roll. but you have to build it. And you can't just play a game like, well, all the axioms that we agree on are our personal life experience. No, well, yes, we can agree that we're both having a personal experience, but none of the elements of our frames are at all exactly the same or even similar enough. I mean, even if we both go to Disneyland, we're both going to go there in a different condition. I might go there when I'm 7, you'll go there when you're 15. It'd be a different experience altogether. You know, you're chasing girls, I'm just going to chase something else, blah, 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 something like that. It's a different experience. So there's no point in having a conversation where you don't understand what arguing requires and what the competition of models involves. We make different models based on establishing a framework and then arguing within the framework. You have to stay within the framework, period. And as soon as you break the frame by saying, I don't want to play anymore, fuck you, I'm going home because your logic's annoying me, your establishment of a premise truth, then the conversation is dead, because the real thing is what you're trying to do is test a truth model. That's it. And you can't do the test fair if every time it looks like the petri dish is growing something you don't want to see, you knock it off the table and then pretend you're the adult. Bullshit.
Please try to understand, and I would like to help you understand, that this is what I'm denying and what we're debating. You said we assume are self-evident truths.
For the sake of argument, it's established that these will be the truths, the confines of the conversation. And if you don't like these premises and you're just playing this game for some glib reason, then just tell me right from the start that these don't mean anything to you, that the established axioms are not true, and therefore, why am I bothering with this? Because even if I convince you of my argument that this model works and your model sucks based on these axioms, if you don't believe in the axioms with any sincerity or haven't agreed to them with any sincerity, I've just wasted my fucking time, because you're going to use the crap from the outside that isn't established or agreed upon to say, this changes everything. There's another dot that you haven't accounted for. You're going to put something else in the model to break the connected dots.
I don't. I think the idea of a self-evident truth is an abysmal affront to the concept of knowledge itself.
Right. So the fact that water is wet is an affront to logic itself. The fact that I would argue you have to sample consciousness to be able to, in any way, understand it as dots. You can't see the dots of consciousness without sampling it. You can't know of them. You can't put them in the right place. You can't have any hope of connecting them because they can't exist unless you sample it. That's a self-evident truth. It's self-evident truth. Most of the things that we say are connected to a bad feeling. A bad feeling is a self-evident truth. You can't convert it into anything else. You experience the bad feeling. You experience the good feeling. It is self-evident. It is self-describing. The feeling has the quality that is the essence of the words, good and bad. We probably wouldn't have the words good and bad if bad feelings didn't exist and good feelings didn't exist. If those things didn't exist, I would argue the word good and bad wouldn't exist.
It's ridiculous.
So that's the emphatic statement. Later, like I said, completely retracted. No, everything in the film strip is self-evident. I mean, self-proving. They argued over whether you say self-evident or self-proving. But everything in the film strip is self-proving. No. The fact that you have one, see, that's when he was right. The fact that you are a feeling thing, that's self-evident. You're doing it. You're tasting it. You're tasting. Okay, I know that doesn't overtly sound incredibly insightful, but it is. You're tasting, tasting. You're seeing, seeing. You're feeling, feeling. A lot smarter than you think.
Self-evident truths are so unsatisfactory that I've spent decades of my life thinking over other ways to look at things.
Exactly. So this is the reveal, okay? I mean, he finds it unsatisfactory that the world's this rigid, cold, brutal place where these horrible facts exist that we have to incorporate into our drawing of reality. He wants to draw 2 dots and a smiley face, and that's it. No hideous, portrait of Darian Gray reality attached to it. He wants to take all the reality out and just keep the 2 little dots and his smiley face. And that's his life work. Childish mush.
And what I came up with is a perception-based data processing model.
A mushy model where I get to turn everything into, abstractions and pretend that there's no cold, hard fact. There's no hard image of brutal fact where both of our narratives can't possibly render it into something else. Torture, for example, or something. No, there's lots of those. And those are the facts, and those are the facts we have to incorporate into our silly story of what it is to be one of these babbling, farting gas bags of bullshit.
I don't believe there are self-proving truths. I think that's a fantasy.
Right, okay. I mean, like I said, I could just play his video, 2 videos from this one saying everything in there is self-evident. Alright, so let's move on to somewhere in the 30-something or other. Yeah, I know. It's magnifying glass. I'll see if I can read my own writing. What the hell is that? It's got to be a 9. Yeah. Gots to be. 39, and we'll go 38 and a little less just in case. Don't want to miss the magic.
From your first person experience, you come up with a model of the...
Oh yeah, just for the sake of pointing out, Piro's obviously a drunk again. I mean, he blames not sleeping, but I mean, he makes videos last week, and just fucking drunk. Who wants to, let's do drunk philosophy. It's fun. See, it's just not fun for me. No, not cool. Get out of my car.
Mechanical world. And then you use the mechanical world to argue the first person experience doesn't exist, isn't valuable, isn't...
Yeah, well, he doesn't argue that it doesn't exist, but yes, the value thing is the one you just have to key on. He doesn't think value originates in sentient experience. And so you have to make that argument. I have made the argument as clearly as I can make it in the sense that I'm saying I'm conscious, and there's nothing about my consciousness that says somehow I'm being fooled and duped, and torture is really fun, and fun is really torture. I'm damn sure I'm not getting this one wrong. And he just says, well, I say you are. Well, geez, you could say it, but you haven't connected it to a single idea that makes that a reasonable suspicion. You can say, I suspect you're deluded. Well, what do you suspect the delusion is based on? How exactly is it possible for me to experience conscious sensations, and you're telling me I don't know the difference between a good one and a bad one? You're fucking nuts.
Liable. entirely a will-less phenomena that's just determinate.
There we go. Will-less phenomena versus determinism. So again, he just keeps trying to put like there's some alternative to determinism, which should be established as one of the axioms by any rational person. Any rational person should say, no, it's cause and effect. There's nothing else going on here. And this is just poofter doofter. This is just the escape hatch. This is just the lever to jump ship, to bail from reality. And that's all this is because if it's deterministic, then he has to establish the narrow confines of the conversation, and it's not going to have any fun unicorn riding in it anymore. And he doesn't like that. He makes it sad face.
It's nothing like what it seems. You use your mechanical model to argue against the data that you use to create the mechanical model. And even if you think that's
again, that's not entirely what Hofstadter is doing. He's only negating one piece of data. The one piece of data he's negating is that conscious experience is the generator of value. He thinks value is something the human being does in terms of saying, I think your negative feelings have value. Now, when that's the only part he associates with value. He doesn't say we recognize value. He says we create it by declarations, by saying something. Not by experiencing something, but by saying something. So I need to tell you whether you suffer. If you're a little rabbit in space and your little legs are hacked off, I need to show up to tell the rabbit bad is happening. Because it's not happening till I show up and declare it. That's his idiotic failure. That's it. Just one failure, but it's a colossal. It breaks all connect the dot logic. You can't connect any dots rationally if you get the difference between torture and fun wrong. If you don't get that right, you're fucked doing anything called reasoning. Every other dot, it's kind of an amazing thing. There's actually a dot that if you take it away, you won't be able to connect those dots into anything. They'll be completely unresolvable as anything close to reality. But it's true. Because the metaphor of connecting dots is just a metaphor. The reality doesn't work that way. The reality works, there are some facts, there are some dots that have a gravity of importance and significance that's huge, the volume. So some dots in reality, some facts are gigantic. And most of the dots are trivial by comparison. And the gigantic fact in the room is feelings matter. Experience has value. In and of itself, the quality of it is the nature of value. If nothing could be harmed, if nothing could feel pain, if nothing could feel torment, there would not be a conversation about anything, ever. Because nothing could matter. The entire forest of matter grows out of the dirt of sensation.
That I'm wrong in that, you should be able to wrap your head around what I'm saying.
Yes, he really should be able to wrap his head around the stupid thing you're saying, which is this stupid thing where let's establish as an axiom that all of reality is going to be defined by my silly narrative. And so we'll never have a conversation outside of me having a million axioms. Not the established axioms, but I have a million of them to resort to, and all of them are abstract pieces of shit, which means I will not say anything emphatically, except with the right to completely contradict myself 10 minutes later. Something like that. Okay, so enough of this moosh, and we'll move on to the last and not leasty bit, somewhere around 41-ish. It says something else stupid. At least it seemed very stupid yesterday. Oh, we're almost there anyway, so let's let it roll, baby. Oh, no, we're not. We're still in the 30s. So we will go to 39 something.
Burn it in the scrutiny of an argument. Yeah?
So he makes the
I'm
video.
really-
You know, the video has Hofladay's voice, and it's even worse in other videos. You can't even hear Hofladay, and then you can hear Pirro. And then there's whole parts where all you hear is Hofladay, and now Pirro muted his mic. I mean, just, you know, as bad as the content is itself, being totally useless, he presents it in these fucking idiotic videos that he never seems to fix. I mean, never fix his behavior enough to make sure this shit doesn't happen over and over again. And it's just such a waste of time.
Hoping you could understand that I too feel that coming from somewhere is different from the logical argument for that something. Where
Coming from somewhere is different than the logical argument for this. Yes, well, there's a technical arguments, and that's all. We have to make technically careful arguments, because clearly, as you demonstrate, if you give you an inch, you'll take a mile. So any fuzziness I leave, you will start petting it and, you know, pouring water on it, trying to grow your own whatever that shit was called. What are those little fucking animal things that you plants and your own pedophile? I don't know what it was called. I can't remember what the hell that shit was. But anyway, you'll do that crap.
where that argument came from is not the same assembly as the argument itself. I agree. It's just that the argument itself is formulated with these as the evidence.
You can't use those as the evidence. That's the whole point. The only way you have to reconstruct your narrative into statements that aren't abstract, in the sense that they are perfectly recognizable to the other person, so you can establish what you're talking about. If we just say, I don't know, if you just say elephant, and then what you're really saying is green pygmy elephant, you know, I have no, it's going to be a very different conversation, right? I mean, when you're talking about big giant elephants, and then you're talking about little green pygmy elephants, now the conversation is obviously going to have weird dots in it, because you're arguing for something that's not my understanding. So anything you pull from your I saw the video, or I read the book, or whatever, you have to establish that, oh yeah, when I read the book I was a little bit drunk, so yeah, the chick in the book was a lot hotter. You know, because even when you're reading drunk, you know, they're always a lot hotter. And, you know, than reality, somehow you know. So, yeah, I get you. Okay, so we just have to say she was moderately attractive, because, yeah, when I read the book I was drunk, so, fuck yeah, my judgment was a little bit fucked up. So you have to establish that, you have to combine the abstractions, and you have to qualify them into a rationally established sentencery, a definition, where the definitions are hard. You can't fuck with them. And he fucks with every definition. He fucks every word, and he sees a word, he sees it as a twitching anus, and attempts to insert his... he just cannot play fair with words. He can't understand that they need to be rigid and careful. And he just won't play that. And so there's no game.
Like, I'm a scientist, I did an experiment. These is the evidence.
Yeah, these is the evidence. My experiment was, I went outside and I poked a bug with a stick, and it went, and that means I know what it feels, I know what it is, I know it's got thirsty, and I know it did the, you know, I rubbed a leaf and I could see a bruise, and so I know it was going ouch, ouch, ouch. You know, these are your interpretation of an experiment. You're not talking about the experiment you did. You're not talking about how weak your actual evidence for anything is. You're just saying, I did the experiment, I conclude parameciums will and want and desire and hope they'll be able to get a house with a nice picket fence, and that, you know, your projections are not anything close to a conveyed understanding. Your vocabulary is entirely broken. And when people like me attempt to point this out to you, that you can't just use the word in any rational, logical conversation. You can't use words. Lots of words are difficult. Infinity, random, and spontaneous. Lots of words that are very fuzzy. You have to be very careful in using them. And as I pointed out, the word living thing is a very dangerous word, because the structure of living things on planet Earth are entirely different on this planet. I mean, there are single-cell organism versus multicellular organism with consciousness. Fundamentally different platform. Not even close to, not running the same operating system. It's not the same hardware. It's a completely different device, fundamentally. That has to be understood. You can't just say life form in any kind of intelligent conversation without making a distinction between the things that are made of living things and the things that are living things. In a sense, we're full of homunculuses, the cells that make us up. They're living little things, but nothing about them except their behavior has any relevance to our function, any direct relevance to our function. We function because the neurons convey electricity, not because the neurons are neurons. All right.
Logically, right? Can we put that to bed? You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying these are logical principles, the data we have in here.
They're only logical principles when you establish agreement on their existence, and when you use vocabulary rigid enough to mean the dot is going to stay where you put it on the paper. You keep using this vacuous and vague language to keep moving dots wherever the hell you want them to make your stupid smiley face. You take dots that are 4 inches away and drag them to the smiley face with your loose language and your ability to convert words into mush, and to say, when I was talking about living thing, I meant, what you meant doesn't mean anything if the whole conversation was based on me thinking you meant something else. So if you're not going to be at all concerned about careful establishment of axioms, your narrative, your first-person experience is really irrelevant. Where you're sourcing your information from is irrelevant to logical conversation. Logical conversation is dependent on us merely agreeing on facts, premises, regardless of source of the knowledge. If I say feelings matter, and we both agree that feelings, something having a sensation, is a significant event in the universe, it doesn't matter whether you acquired that knowledge for personal experience or not. It just matters that you've accepted it as a truth, and now we can talk about how the other dots are connected. All right. No, I'd say, Gary, hey, another job well done. I think I dissected that very concisely. That was a well done video, Gary. But a few people say that now and then. It's not, I appreciate it. But it does seem like I get an awful lot of shit, and I make really good videos. And people just pretend it's not there. No, it's there. Damn good video. People. Pathetic. Yeah, they went on this whole rag too about, the Gary technique, and they use it, right? So they'll play videos and comment, and they do it so much worse than me, in the sense that the other person gets to say like 2 minutes to their 50 minutes. And I'm a lot better than that in terms of expediting the process. But they do it so poorly, and then they complain about me doing it, and it's just amazing. How the hell can they defend that nonsense? Because if you put the two videos side by side, you can see I'm actually responding to the actual arguments being made by the actual imbecile, when they're just chasing each other's tails, chasing each other's fart smells, something like that. So anyway, there's probably something else to comment on. Let me just make sure there's nothing happening in the narrow YouTube universe I watch somewhat vaguely. Yeah, warbles and his kangaroos, lots of these fucking ideology things. The whole concept of ideology is so irritating. Yes, we need more trivializations of important concepts. Ideology is just trivial mush, blah 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 blah. No response from the Anticontavad yet. Maybe he's not going to, but he requested argument and I made the argument, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, the bug guy has been posting a couple of videos. He had one firefly larvae. Really an amazingly horrific little bug, in terms of its function and look. It's kind of funny how, you'd kind of say just because like fireflies have this really neat thing and they're doing this whole chemical fluorescence thing and it's really interesting, and so you'd say, oh, I bet the rest of their life is really totally uninteresting. No, but it was a larvae. They're totally bizarre also. So that is kind of neat when that kind of stuff happens. So anyway, alright, I think I'm done here. So another week and time flying and such. So yeah, I have so much to do. I want to do some physics experiments. I got all this work to do. I got all this, just so much stuff. So busy times and such. So until the next time and such.